little less. I've had too much coffee. It's gonna drive me nuts.
Well, yeah. Got a little bit of CD in me too, so.
Oh, good. You're in good company.
All right, the meeting will come to order. Now holding the February meeting of Harney County School District number 3, and we have a quorum, so if you'll join me in the salute to our flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I think we will start off with a guest presentation by Mrs. Cheek about the biomass cooperative. If you wanna come on up.
Yeah, this is really nice here. Thank you for having me. Well, I don't know everybody that knows what we did here, or can I?
Yeah.
I'm away from you guys. All right. So in 2008, the school had a real problem with heat, and it was a failing control system, pipe, everything else. But they were not able to spend money that they didn't have. At that time, there was teachers getting laid off. There was reduction of kids going to school. A lot of the jobs here in Harney County had dried up. And so it was a really tough time and the economy was struggling. At the same time, the county knew that they were going to get their boiler condemned. And it was going to be condemned in 2016. And they had been saving for it. In 2012, unbeknownst to me and who was the board chair, and the judge, which was Steve Grasty, we both reached out to Wisewood, Andrew Hayden, and asked if he would come and talk to us about something that we could burn wood refuge from. Or he did come to us and talk to us separately at the board meeting and then at the county court meeting. And he was telling us about pellets and pellet mill. I had quite a bit of knowledge about pellet mill because I ran a mill and I know what it's good for. It's good for stuff that's falling apart. You want to use it somehow. It's not really good for making money, nor is it very good for people that want it because it changes. It changes in value, it breaks down, doesn't burn as good. So we told him we would really like you to bring in some a biomass that has hog debris right out of the log yards. And he said, well, I don't have it here, but I know where it is. He left and he came back in about 2 years. And when he came back, he told us about a boiler system in Austria. And it burned yard debris. Austria doesn't have a lot of trees or a lot of it. What it does have is a lot of brush, a lot of alder, some hardwoods, but a lot of leaves and stuff. And he showed us and showed the public movies of it and showed us how we could do it. And we agreed to join together, the county and the school, and I asked him to bring a boiler in from Austria. We had some funding lined up with US Bank, and it kind of fell through. I don't know if you remember, but in 2012, things weren't really going great either. But he went over and got it, and the US Endowment, which is an offshoot from the TANF war, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's when Canada dropped a lot of fur on the lumber markets, especially hit Portland and the Gorge area. And the US filed a tariff on it, basically, and it's called TANF, and it charged them X amount per thousand. So we quit buying fur from there. When that happened, there was a lot of funding for different projects like this. And we were able, through the US Endowment, let's see, Carlton Owen is the head of that. And he had guaranteed us $500,000 to help with this. The school had really no money set aside for it, but county had about $500,000 set aside. So we went to the USDA, we went to the Forest Service, we asked for help, we formed a group of people. We decided that a co-op would be the way to go because we would like to have local control. A lot of things happened after that, but when we finally got the funding together, we had gotten $1 million worth of EIPs, which are energy incentive performance bonds, and they're sold on a per basis that you get about, well, you can make a lot of money off of them. They are being sold along with some other programs. Again, that was the Betsy credits. I don't know if you knew about that, but the reason I want you to know about it is because they were supposed to be sold at about 5 cents on the dollar. Ours were supposed to be sold about 20. What happened is there was a run on the Betsy credits and they let us sell them. And when that happens, the Department of Energy for the state of Oregon pretty much was defunct. In fact, they even shut the offices down in Salem. And they were going to fund our money to complete our purchase through their loan, which was called a SELP. It was through a bank that they had. They didn't have money to do anything. They shut basically everything. When that happens, Myers Memorial became involved with us. And I'm sure you guys have heard who they are and what they are. They do a ton of really good work here. They helped us with the low income housing out in Hines. They've done a lot of stuff in this community. Teresa Diamond was the person that I was working with there. And she knew what was going on, and she suggested that they fund $1.5 million for us to be able to pay for everything that was going to come over. And she said, and I agreed, that we could sell the EIPs instead of selling it all at once, which was going to be when it was paid, when it was done, which was about June of, or May of 2016. It instead could only be 2 of the EIPs a year, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of around $200,000. So Myers Memorial asked that we put $500,000 into the bank. The county, like I said, had 487,000 or 84,000. And the school scraped together, I think it was $24,000 that they could match. It brought it up to 500,000. We put that in the bank account, and then Myers put the rest of the money in that. Andrew Hayden had formed a business called Harney County Energy, HCE. That business was formed probably to protect his own company, I would say, but it was to bring this product, this program to Harney County, and he didn't know if he would run it forever. He was thinking that he wouldn't. That's what we were planning to, but he was prepared to do that. So after that, I see, this school put $18,441, and the county put $4,801 and $559. When we got all that stuff together, we began to tear out the boilers that were in existence. The county had the money to tear out their boilers, their boiler and their system. In addition to that, they also had money from the state because of the circuit court being in the county building. And because of that, they were able to get another, I think it was almost $600,000. Might have been more than that. I didn't track it because it wasn't my business, but they put a Daikin mini split water cooling tower on the outside system in. And it is absolutely by far twice as efficient as anything that I've seen around, because it hot water is pretty easy to keep hot in the walls and the various things. And that cooling system that evaporates water so it trickles down, That's very, very effective. I think the hospital probably has one of those. It's pretty common. Let's be up on the top of it though, because I haven't seen it. At any rate, the school, the first thing we had to do, we were trying to get from the Department of Energy, I think it was called a SELP, well, no, that was what it was, Cool Grants, Cool Schools Grant. And it was for $273,000, and it was to replace the broken and outdated heating system, the controls that were inside the building. We didn't get that because, as I said, the Department of Energy at State of Oregon really took a hit. And so what we did is HDBC, at that time HCE, we bought first steam pipes for the ground because it was under the ground, but they were leaking. And we had to bring steam pipe fitters in, super expensive. I want to say it was $85,000, but it could have been more than that. Because I didn't keep track of all that because it wasn't anything I had to at that time. In addition to that, they hired NCC, who I think did the controls at the high school also. And they came in and did all new controls in the school. I think it's thermostatically controlled. There was still some problems in the school because there was some lack of control that didn't have anything to do with the thermostat. It had more to do with pipes. And I think they cured some of that, at least in Unit 1, and they're not having the problem that they did have. But we didn't get AC out of that. I think we still had some of that in there. The school asked also if we would tear out the boilers, and we did. We through HCE, or HDBC, we paid for it eventually. We tore out a big boiler in the where the propane boiler is, and then there's one in Unit 1. We call that the exchange because that's where we take the steam after it's heated, what portions of the school get steam heat, and condense it down into hot water, and then that's piped right out of there, right at Unit 1, straight out to the street. The pipe that we put in the ground was pretty expensive. It came from Russia. I should have brought my little collar. It has that Kevlar collar. It's good even for insulation on the outside of the building, but ours is 4 foot down in the ground and it's right against the sewer lines and stuff, so it's very well protected. I don't think we ever have a problem with that. But that was pretty expensive. In fact, when I added it up, I'm not sure where that price exactly is, but it was about 200 foot or $200 a lineal foot. Why that is because you're taking it out, you're putting the pipe in, which is coming from Russia, but you also are repaving, and that's the expense. We were lucky enough to get 6 blocks straight down in front of the school, straight down the side of the Catholic Church, down in front of the Catholic Church to the back of the Lincoln Complex, down the side of the Lincoln Complex, the south side, and then straight over to the jail complex and the county and St. Andrew's Church, and Symmetry Care also uses our system. They paid for their own pipe. They paid from their pipe that was almost at the parking lot where St. Andrew's is. They paid for it all themselves because they wanted one system. We didn't have to pay for that. Okay. Let's see. All right. So what we're doing now is we have about 30% excess energy that we could sell. So we're producing it. We just don't really have a place to go with it currently. There is a lot of help from the state and the USDA. There's help from Oregon Trails has been really great with us. They have applied for a RISP grant. That is a rural energy savings program. But what they get the money from the USDA, and then they get to make decisions on who gets it, and they can charge a 1 to 2% interest on that. It is used for infrastructure, it's used for new heating districts, it's used for anything that will bring about a return on savings. Most of this is focused on replacing diesel and propane, because that is the pollutant. You guys know that every gallon that's brought in here, there's no natural gas, is trucked in. So there's pollution all the way. It's efficient. It's very efficient, but it has those problems. We, this year, I'm not jumping around too much, we burned about 500 tons, which isn't very much, really. You could easily get a lot more fuel than that too. This year, we were able to complete the stewardship agreement. It's not a contract. It doesn't have an ending. It's with the Immigrant Creek Malheur Ranger District. It's through the help of Josh Giles, who is our district ranger out there, and High Desert Partnership, who has joined us in trying to get some of these little niches of post and pole, biomass, little jobs here and there, because really that's how a lot of the stewardship agreements have led to some pretty good businesses up in John Day and some other areas. Lakeview's got a big post and pole and juniper handling down there. I think it's called Bob's Big Trees. So we are working with them. We have our first 84 acres, and we can start on it anytime we want. They pay for X amount that's taken off. We track it. The use of that material can go to us, or it can go to somebody that needs poles, or it can go to somebody that needs firewood, or it can go to somebody that has a little business and is making, juniper posts, whatever. That's what we're trying to develop here. It's not going to be us supporting the whole thing. It can't. We don't need that much. But what it could be is the beginning of what we can see up in John Day. And that's what we want. We want to support that. We want to help that. And we want to engage in that. We do a lot of business with CNB. CNB is our supplier. They use our bins, which are the 40-foot, just like a bin that you put garbage in, but it's been converted. It has a top, it has a hydraulic system in it, it has a sweeping mechanism that sweeps the fuel out into a trough that's right at our boiler. They load probably 4, maybe 3 a week that they bring, and then they take it back and fill it up. Right now, we're renting a building from Rob Davis. We're renting a building right now because we've learned over the course of the last 5 years that rain and snow doesn't look really bad. In fact, the county paid $40,000 to pave a big slot for us, a big strip, 65 by 100, hoping that we could get a tent structure over that. And just a little bit of snow, some of it was coming up from the bottom. It's out at the recycling center. But it just seems to really have a problem. And then what it does is it forms icebergs. And they really look like icebergs, and they really act like icebergs when it's below zero. And it's very difficult to maneuver those things out of a trough that's like that. And it's hard on the equipment, it's hard on the guys, and it doesn't happen at 9 in the morning. It happens at 11 o'clock or whatever. If that does happen, and sometimes it does, we have 100% redundancy with the propane boiler. It comes on. There's never an interruption in that. But we work really, really hard not to have that boiler running, except on like fall days and spring days when we don't need much heat. We just need it in the morning, likely, or at night, because it heats the jail and stuff too, so they have heat going all the time. We also do business with CNB. They do a very good job of keeping us full of propane, and they're really easy for us to work with, and we appreciate them. And of course, with Davis, we have a contract with our developer. We've been paying him $500 a month for overseeing our system. Our system is completely automated. it even calls me or whoever we assign. Right now, there's an assigned person. If there's a problem, like there's a light on, or the temperature's dropping, or the water's dropping. We have a water softener that we bought when we put it in, a system. We have a lot of bells and whistles on this. It's nothing like anything in the US right now. And most of the people that I've taken through there, and I've taken a lot of people through there, a lot of the Benson, his office, and guys up at the Umatilla Depot, they all want to go through and look at it because they want to get an idea of what it is. Some of them have hired Andrew to do stuff for them, some of them haven't. But they all are so surprised at, here's a computer in a little box, kind of like this. And that is our brains. And here's a panel on the side, like 5 panels, and they're nothing but lights. I mean, they look like a bank system or something. They're covered, they're clean. It runs our system. Everything is connected, everything is hooked up to itself. I'd really like to show you guys. You might not see the remarkableness of it that I did, because I was used to a big old cogen and old boilers out at the mill. It's pretty cool, and should last a very long time. The other thing we did is we had to build that building, we had to pour the cement, we had to take electricity there. The school aids us with a phone. We use a phone line of theirs. We have Wi-Fi contacts at each place if there's a problem. We have meters at each location. The only one we don't is the school. And it's because the school only heats partially with hot water now, which is great. And I can see the efficiency of that if I compare those previous bills. But what they are is they are steam. And steam is an accumulation after we take all of the other stuff off. And so it isn't really red like that. I'm sure it's accurate. It hasn't changed much. But if they could go all to hot water, it probably would reduce quite a bit of their bill. It does cost quite a bit of money too, but it would probably make a difference, because they're starting now to have a little bit of trouble with some of the pipes in one section, but not section 2, which is the older section. So I don't really understand that. So our opportunity right now is a veterans village that's going in slightly below the hospital. So the parking lot of the hospital and where they have their boiler there, it's right on that corner there. The land was given to them. It was given to the county. It's through the Angie Lamborn of the community centers, senior community center. And she helped put in the lower income and seasonal workers housing out there in Hines too. She believes she'll have it paid off in about a year. And she's one sharp little cookie. She wants us to try to help her find a heat system that could be funded through the state, let's hope. We can't fund it, but they could. For the system exactly mirroring the county. I figured that's going to be about what it would cost to do for just the equipment to do Lincoln School. Lincoln School would be about $360,000. I'm talking about the equipment. So mini splits, the tower, those things. When you're converting a building and you're drilling and stuff, it's pretty labor intense. I think I gave the developer the price that I got for what the county was. And the county was kind of hit or miss. What I mean is they had never done anything like this before. But the gentlemen that did it are from Bend, Oregon. They're Bend Heating, I think. Bend Heating. And they know what they're doing. They're very dedicated. They've helped us with when I still worked at the county, there'd be little things that we didn't really understand how to work our system. We get the high and low, hot and cold too close together, and then it didn't want to fire or shut down. So we had to learn that. But they've done a really good job. It's very clean. It's everybody at the courthouse really likes it. Jail does too. So hopefully we can help them do that. We did, and I can give you guys all this so you can look at it in your leisure. We have a biomass feasibility study that was paid for by the US Forest Service. It was done in 2018. There's 3 clusters. One goes down to the library and the new museum programs they're gonna start building. One goes down to the theater, the Elks Club, and Burns Fort. And they are interested. They're interested in getting it down. They're putting the pipe in the ground, would be interesting. If we put the pipe down behind our boiler on dirt, on a road that really isn't a road because there's no road there, it's Harney. It would be very cheap compared, it wouldn't be any, well, it might be 200 by now, it might be the same price, but the pavement wouldn't have to go over it because it's not paved. We wouldn't have to dig it up. If we do that, the access for the hospital is very close. There's a road and the field's right there. It's very close. The access for the veterans, or health office and hospice who have old system, they've got some mini split, but it's all heat pump. That might be something we might look at. There is a developer that is talking to us, and I've given him all the information on the Lincoln building. When he does the RFP and stuff, he's very excited because there's ports at the Lincoln building. That means no pipe except in the building. It would be pretty cheap to put that in. It'd be cheap to access the hot water, I should say it correctly. The Indian Cultural Center, which is the old department store downtown, Burns Department Store. It's right across from our community center. It's right downtown on Main Street. They are very interested in looking at this. They've gone so far as to have them actually map out where they would put their heating systems and everything, because it doesn't have anything in that building. If they hook onto that, it's 2 blocks. And hopefully we could put a T down on Main Street or something like that. They are working with the USDA on these things right now. They also have a couple opportunities for us, and we would like to work with them. They can take a lot of juniper off of their land, and so could anybody else, but they have money for that, and they have money to develop some of these things. And they're very motivated and working together to try to pull this together. And I hope we can be part of that. I hope we can help them. That would be a wonderful thing for us. So I'm gonna send you guys some stuff. I probably took you on a wild goose chase. Do you have any questions?
I don't.
When you were talking about the funding, I just want to make sure I understand, was it grants or was it bonds? The funding?
The tax credits,
Yeah.
They are credits that are purchased, and then, let me see, I didn't purchase them. Their money that is accessible to certain things, to be used for certain things, to promote clean energy. So it could be water recovery, even, like recovering water. It could be windmills. For a long time, the big windmills that they were generating, they were paying that. But when the Betsy credits, which Rob, look it up, that's a difficult one. It was all over the state, and I don't even know exactly what Betsy means, but it was to not have to pay taxes and to not have to do all kinds of stuff, I believe, but they sold them up really cheap. That's what crashed Department of Energy, Oregon Department of Energy, not the US.
I've just been curious when I see every month going through the financials. I didn't know what portion of that money paid to the biomass cooperative was for consumables or maintenance, and how much, if it was towards repayment of loans.
Yes, it is. I'll tell you what, you own this. School owns this. Do you want financials? Easy for me to give it to you. You bet. Yeah. Because one thing I've really noticed in the last couple of weeks is that boy, propane is, ooh, it's really good. I'm not sure where we're at. I it might be about $3 a gallon, I'm not sure. We were at 151 when we did some of these things. So we try to stay off it this time of year anyway. I would be glad to do that, if that's okay with you, right? I mean,
Sure.
I volunteer about 25 hours a week. There's times when it's more, there's times when it's less. I don't do that because I'm just such a great guy. I believe in this. I believe in this. The mill is where I raised my kids. That's the money that we had. I want to see that left here. And if it helps young people develop their own businesses and become self-reliant. And the other thing I want to tell you is our system burns its own smoke. The only particulate release is a real fine ash because the smoke goes up, there's another boiler, again, technology from Austria, burns it, right? And then it goes down and into a hopper to the side and it looks like crematorium. That's exactly what it looks like. It has a real high carbon value. There are some guys working with solar panels that are interested in testing it. I'll let them use it. It's good for soil additive too. It was good for the biochar. In fact, they're still working on that up in John Day. I just want to see us be able to hold on to some of these jobs and some of these things and get the true benefit of what surrounds us, not as fire, but as the place to raise our children and take care of each other.
Any other questions? Thanks a lot for presenting.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah,
It's my pleasure.
any stuff, those financials be awesome, but any other information, it was good to hear the history, so I appreciate taking the
Yeah,
time.
and I'll send, there's a really neat Facebook clip that, trust me, I cried. It's really good, and I'll send it to you guys. Okay?
I watched the video today. Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah, I watched it today, so I was gonna recommend that.
Oh, yeah, you bet. It's so good.
It's just brief, but it goes from bottom to.
It's Sustainable Northwest paid for that. So.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people trying to help us. Tucker Billman is really trying to help us. There's a ton of people. I can't even say all the names. Mark is trying to help us. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He's hooked me up with the people that want to build HB 2021, and it is for exactly what we're doing, jobs and clean, efficient. So I think we're going to be able to get some help from them too. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, is there any public comment? No public comment? All right. Moving on to the next order of business, which is the consent agenda. Everyone's had an opportunity to look at the agenda and the minutes, and contracts. Did anyone see any changes or anything?
For like the nurse and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the minutes and stuff. If there are no objections, then we'll pass the consent agenda by general consensus. School reports. Did anyone have any questions on any of the school reports before we get to our school report presentation?
I just, I didn't really have any questions, but the one from Heinz with the, and maybe it's just me, but with the Fs and the Ds and the reports and how they're, I really had a hard time kind of understanding that.
I had a hard time putting it together because I wanted.
I'm sorry.
That's
but-
okay, that's okay.
And I had Mr. Medley's like prime because I added up, it said the 103 had 3 points and so many had 3.5s and then so many had 40s. And then I was thinking it was actual individual. Then I added them up and I want you to know the numbers looked fabulous when I added them up.
We were really impressed.
It was super impressive, but then I realized that that wasn't the case. But that was the only thing is I just really couldn't understand the Fs and the Ds, but.
Okay. I'll work on it.
I felt like those reports, I was really looking forward to the iReady data because I knew it'd be ready this month, and it showed improvements in all schools, especially the elementary school. Those reports showed good improvement. Do the high schoolers do iReady testing?
Yeah, we're in the process. Our window is, we're doing it,
Through the end of this month.
yeah, through the end of this month, so our window's a little bit different.
It takes our kids a little bit longer to do it because they only have a little chunk of time each day to work on it. And so they take a little bit here and there, and then it takes about a week to 2 weeks for our kids to finish it up.
Well, that's all right, but we'd love to see that. It seems like the more we get acclimated with it, the better metric it is. It makes more sense, and it was really good to see that improvement. So keep up the good work. If there aren't any other questions, I guess we could go into our presentation for Ms. Hunter.
So I'm gonna kind of cover two different things. I'm gonna actually just start with iReady, and then I'll update you on the English language arts. And I apologize you don't have this one. I kind of threw it in at the last minute instead of what I sent you guys earlier. So looking at iReady, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna break it down by school, and then I'm gonna break it down by the district level. There's some interesting data that we've been able to pull from this. So each of them is set up in the format like we saw in Slater's report, with the top is our fall data, and then the second one is that winter benchmark. With this, I also took a picture with how many students were assessed in each of them, because again, when we watch that bar shift, if we added 50 students, that bar is going to shift. If we lost 50 students, that bar is going to shift too. So just another piece to kind of keep in mind. I started with our Homelink program, which is our online program, mainly because I was very curious to see that our program is effective. We know students are successful within the courses. The one thing to keep in mind with this is throughout the school year, we really retained a core group of families, but we've also had a lot of students come and visit us for 2 to 3 weeks, not be successful in an online learning format, and back to the in-person school they went. And so it was pretty interesting to me when I broke these numbers down, is kind of, these students were all the ones we've had throughout the year. These students were a few of our students who came to us mid-year, and a lot of students were attracting our students who have chronic absenteeism. And we're finding being home doesn't really fix their chronic absentee issues. Again, we found that really our most successful students are students who have supported families, parents who will sit, if not at the table, but near the students. But it was pretty interesting to look at the individual students who have been within our program since either the very beginning or almost the beginning, and the ones that we still have here and seeing that growth. Again, it was pretty interesting breaking it by grade level as well, and looking at making sure our program is effective. And what we found is the students who are utilizing the program as it's designed, they're engaged in the content each day. They're doing those extra pieces we've layered in to help support them. They are growing. In fact, they're growing at fast rates. The other nice thing that we've been able to do, because it is online, it's a little different. The world is very different with that, is we've been able to take students who maybe aren't growing at the rate we would like to, and put in place extra support, or making sure the grade level work is appropriate. We've been able to add rigor to students who maybe flatlined at grade level, which again, I'm really glad students are at grade level, but I want to see them growing no matter what level they're performing at. So we've been able to use some of the flexibility of that online program to be able to really individualize what each student is doing. So this one was math.
What are those different? What's the green, the yellow?
Okay, so the green with the lines in it is a student who is mid or above grade level. So kind of that student who's performing above where they should be. The green with no lines is early on grade level. The yellow is 1 grade level below. The red with no lines is 2, and the red with lots of lines is 3 or more. I'd be more than happy to show you more breakdowns, but I really wanted to make sure what I was presenting protected the confidentiality of our students, because we don't have 100 students. And when I break it down by grade level, most people know the 2 kindergartners that are in our program. So I'm happy to share that, maybe in not such a public format. And then this was the reading scores. So pretty similar. Again, we're seeing lots of growth. Those students who are coming into our program, because again, a handful of them they come and visit us for a couple of weeks, they get put on academic probation, and then we meet with the family to, if this might not be the right fit for your family. For Slater, so a little more what we would imagine school looking like. Our top again is that fall, and then the bottom is the winter. So, I mean, the graphs speak for themselves. That's amazing growth. I think what I love seeing I love that kids are growing, but those little red bars, again, we're providing interventions in reading and math at Slater Elementary, and it's working. Kids are catching up. Kids who were 3 or more grade levels below, cut it in half. That's huge. So that's super exciting. And then looking at reading. Again, not only are we having those students who are slightly below playing catch up, but we're also having those students who are very far behind catch up. Looking at the middle school, again, we're seeing that huge growth again. We're seeing lots of students within that 1 grade level playing catch up. Again, we're having students get on grade level where they should be. We're providing supports and resources. Students are using their Lateo time to be able to provide intervention for utilizing the iReady program and things like that. Again, we're catching up. Again, we still see those red bars. Again, they're getting smaller, which we really like. But again, utilizing the data to say, okay, what's our plan? And working with that, supporting our teachers and making sure we have good curriculum, making sure we have good interventions and things like that. I mean, Mr. Burns and his staff are, middle school's a tough age, and trying to get those students just really engaged in wanting, to improve. We're working with Slater and the middle school because they can utilize not just the diagnostic tool, but also they utilize the individualized instruction portion of iReady, not available at the high school level, and providing incentives. So we've set aside some funds to come up with programs to reward students for not just improvement, but spending time engaging in their own education, which again, if we can incentivize them to be excited to get on and learn, we're doing something right. That's the hope. Here's the middle school for reading. Again, lots of growth. We're seeing some of those kids who are far behind playing catch up. It was interesting to me on this one when I look at that winter mark for reading. These kids who are on grade level are almost 6% there, and then we have students who are really needing still some catch up. Again, we're moving in the right direction, which is awesome. But I thought it was pretty interesting. We had a handful of students who were significantly behind. Now they're just a tiny bit behind, which again is what I would expect as we move up in grade level. Catching up gets harder the older you get. For the high school, this is the fall data. When we have that winter data, we'll give it to you. They only take it in 9th grade and 10th grade. Our 11th graders use the standardized state testing at this point. I don't know if we'll decide to look differently and have 11th and 12th graders take it, but when we look at this data to try to use it to determine interventions and supports we need, we're really hoping at those younger high school levels, we're layering those things in. So by the time they're 11th and 12th graders, our vision has kind of switched to making sure they're ready for those next steps. So that one is that. That one is reading. Going too fast. Okay. Then looking district-wide. So I thought this was really interesting. Again, do notice the number of students who were assessed. Some of it is the day I pulled this. I am certain the number of students assessed has changed since I pulled this data. I did it about a week ago. And so just notice the numbers a little bit different. But again, when I look at, we have 1% of students and now we have 10% of students who are mid or above grade level. Again, we're meeting those students who are at grade level, which is very important to us, that we're not just playing catch up, but we're making sure everyone is progressing. Again, we're looking at those students who were 2 to 3 grade levels behind. We're seeing massive catch up. Again, what we're doing is working. Students are getting there. Still got work to do, but. And then looking and reading, again, some great successes here. Our teachers are clearly working really hard in the classroom to support these learners and support the learners at all the different levels. And you don't have a classroom of all the students who are at grade level. You get a mix of the colored bar in your classroom.
Isn't iReady testing based on a set of grade standards? So for example, the questions or the content that you're testing on at the beginning of the year is the same as the end of the year because it's based on where you should be by the time you finish second grade, for instance. Is that?
So it's a little bit different because it's called prescriptive, and so it will adjust with the student. The other piece is in the areas of reading and in the areas of math. They have multiple subcategories they're looking at. So for example, you may have a student in literature who's reading above grade level, but in nonfiction text, they're reading 3 grade levels below. And so we're able to get really specific within where those supports need to be. Again, truly, I would say it actually starts slightly above grade level, just watching the students who take the assessment. And then from there, as students get things correct, the rigor and the grade level moves up. It gets harder because they want to kind of find that breaking point. Where is this student at? The nice thing too is, they miss a few in vocabulary. Now they're going to read a story and they're going to work on comprehension. And then the program will loop back to vocabulary. So it really does a nice job kind of really honing in on those levels. The test doesn't look the same from fall to winter. Granted, where they're placing those students does look the same.
So in theory, it would make sense that the winter scores would look better than the fall scores because they're that much further into that year of their education and towards meeting the goals for that year. Do you know, are these winter results improvements over last year's winter results?
Yep.
That's a little bit because I looked back and I kind of felt it worked.
So what was interesting, so I have never found this graph and I can't talk too deeply because I'm still learning about it, but I'm super excited about it because what it did is it looks at within the program, a student takes the test in the fall and it gives them a goal. Based on a typical student in a typical school year, they're going to grow this many points and get here. And then they give them what's called a stretch goal. So if you have really good interventions and extra supports, you're going to get to this point within the grade level. And the nice thing is it does that whether you're 3 grade levels or below, maybe by the end of the year, the goal is to be 1 grade level below. And it does it for students at grade level. And so the goal is that all of our students are meeting the goal. We have provided adequate education for them to grow in the appropriate way within each area. So when we look at this one, it didn't break it by reading and math as far as I noticed. But what it did is it looked at that annual typical growth, that's the little box at the top. And so based on the typical growth we expect to see between the fall data and the winter data, we had 58% of our students meet that goal. Last year we had 38%, might have been 32, it was in the 30s. So we've had more growth this year between our fall to winter than we did prior. By the end of the year, last year, we had like 92%. It was really, I was very impressed with distance learning, not distance learning, COVID, and that's huge growth. So I'm really excited to see that continue to grow. The graph at the bottom is broken down by school. And so looking like at our online students, we had 25% of those students met their typical goal, and 6% of them met that stretch goal. At Slater, 25% of them met their goal, so 25% of the students met their end of year goal. Like, they're there. Good job, kiddos, you've met your goal. Obviously, we're gonna keep them along. And then we had 4% meet that stretch goal. At the middle school, we had 37% of students meet that goal that the program has set for them. And then we had 13% meet that stretch goal. I had never seen this report, so the principals I know have been playing with it as well, because you can break classroom and teacher and student. And so really, we're gonna be able to take this data and say, you know, whoa, something we're doing in 8th grade, kids are making double the progress as they are in 6th grade. What do we need to do? What's different within that approach? I'm happy to explain more of this report as I learn more about it. I've reached out to the company as well to give me some training on it, because I think there's a lot we can do to compare not just our growth, but my hope is this year we made this much growth, next year we make this much growth, the year after we make this much growth, and we just continue getting better at our craft of supporting students. So I think that this is a really great measure to look at that. When we have the high school's winter data all finished up, the high school will be on this as well. How is that for a bunch of information?
Good.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions?
I really don't. I understand way more than I did 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I don't have any questions on it.
That was really good data, not only in the way it was presented, but also what it said about what's going on in school. So it's
We have some big celebrations. Again, it's not easy right now. Kids are behind. We know that, but I'm really excited that what we're doing is working. Again, our people in the trenches are working really hard for this data to look this way. That's pretty awesome for our community. So the other thing I just wanted to give a quick update is on our English language arts adoption. This is what was in my board report that you guys received. This is just this is a copy of what our committee is using. We have just shy of 20 staff members on our committee, and we're very much in the beginning stages of this. And so the state came out with an approved list. That's the really tiny one that's in your packet. And so what we've done is we've gone through those programs and kind of figured out what is it that we as a staff want. That's really great that the state said these, 15 programs meet what you're looking for. And so what our team has done is we worked to create a rubric, the very first page in your packet. And I'm really proud of the committee, because instead of using some of the other tools that we looked at, which you'll find in that packet as well, they said, no, we want these things. Our kids need phonics instruction. Our high school teacher was able to say, when they get to me, I need them able to do this and this. And it was very interesting to me, because I kind of gave them the options. Here's some really great put together ones. And they said, no, we want to make our own. We want to make one that has what students in Harney County need. And so these are some of the areas that they want to look at. We're taking a team of about 15 people over to Ontario on Friday, because there is a English language arts caravan there. So all of the approved curriculums are over there. And so we're taking our team over, and this will be the tool that they're going to use for kind of I'm calling it our first go through. A lot of times when we look at these programs, there's a handful of them that you crack the book and you go, nope. Sometimes they're companies that are just kind of up and coming companies. Sometimes it's a company that maybe their curriculum is 100% online. There's no actual textbooks. We know those aren't things that our community needs. And so our hope from Friday is to kind of narrow down that list. What are our top 3 or 4 programs? We'll then bring those programs here to Harney County and invite the community to come in and look at those programs and utilize our adoption tools that we have. And I'm really hoping our community too to take a deep dive. I don't think the community wants to spend a whole entire day plus some extra time going through all the fluff of programs that really don't have what Harney County needs. So our hope is our team can take a few of those off the list and come up with a manageable number that we can determine what fits what we need. We'll invite the public to come in and look. I've offered to the teachers, if we have a toss-up between two programs, we can absolutely pilot those programs this year. The representatives from all of the different companies have been nice enough to give our teachers online access early. And so what we've done is we've been working as a team to kind of come up with, let's start peeking at what the program is. So this is something that all of the adoption team has available to them. This will be something that we'll share with the public. Right now, I just want the down and dirty. What do you see when you get online? And so our teachers have been able to utilize the online login information and, and then add their comments. So we had one educator from Harney County say that, gee, I was doing some research on the program. The nonfiction is super dry. And again, our goal is to tear these programs apart to make sure that we can find one that fits the needs or one that fits 9 out of 10 needs, and we can come up with a plan to meet that last thing. Likely what our team has found so far in peeking around at the programs is we can find a really rich program for reading, but not a lot of writing support. What I've told the team is then we're going to come to the table again and look at a writing program that can accompany our English language arts program. Ideally, we'll find a program that is K-12 aligned. There's like 3 of them. So if we can't, that's okay, but making sure we choose a program that as they make that jump to the other curriculum, they're prepared for that. And so you can see that the teachers have been busy at work, hopping in and looking at those different programs, kind of coming up with the pieces they like so far and the pieces they don't like. So it's been a really great process so far, but I just kind of wanted to give you an update. I'll have a lot more information after Friday, once we've kind of narrowed down those options. I did put out a public notice. Mr. Quick sent it out to all of our families. I have one community member reach out already. I got some questions for you and we had some great questions. I'm also keeping notes of that because likely if someone had that question, that will be information as we choose our program that families will want to know. And which is great because their questions are really valuable and it's probably affecting more than just one family. So I'm kind of keeping those so we can put together kind of an informational piece for parents when we make that final decision. That's kind of where we're at. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. If you have anything in your little packet, you can let me know, but I just wanted to share kind of what they've worked on so far and where they're at.
Thank you very much. Be excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, it's been a great process so far.
All right, thanks. Next order of business, superintendent's report.
First 2 items I have on my report are the highlighted areas underneath on the agenda. The first one's the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. This is almost identical plan that we shared with you at the very beginning of the year. It's a required document that we put together in order to receive ESSER funds. So we updated it, basically says how we're going to address the pandemic within our schools. With the masking rule potentially changing, we may have to update this once again once that rule goes away, because they're saying we're going to have to update our plan. So if the rules change, which we hope they do, I'll update that plan and put it up whichever board meeting that comes to. But, read through that and have any questions, please feel free. Otherwise, I'll end up submitting that plan to the state here. We have to this month to do it, but we'll get it in the next couple of weeks. Second one is the recruiting and retention plan. Put that in there as really a chance for you to kind of review it and see what we currently do. And there are some ideas out of the group that I worked with, some potential things that we could do. And so I would definitely welcome any thoughts that you guys have about that, what we're doing, and what we're maybe taking some potential next steps to doing to really look at recruiting and retaining our staff as best we can. Do you guys have any notes right off the bat on that particular plan that you caught your attention, you want to talk about at all?
The two things, you guys. Yes.
No, I mean, no, I don't have any really on the plan, but I do think we definitely, and I feel like we've brought up sometimes, pushed it down the road. Duty to definitely explore a real HR. We have, I mean, we're just too big anymore for that to all fall on Cheryl.
Sure.
Yeah, we've got, and I think that would just kind of help make a lot of this more clear too. I believe it's very important that we work toward having a full-time, I don't, part-time, somebody who works in HR, probably do. That's what they do.
I agree. I will have to say that the last meeting I walked away shocked that there isn't an HR person department. I mean, I'm not a humongous fan of HR or whatever. It doesn't always bring good things, but I just can't believe that employees or don't have somebody that specializes in that to talk to. That's their actual, position, with the concerns of both of the staff and concerns of the employees in mind. I was just shocked by that. So, especially being a county, a school district entity, I'm still blown away that there isn't an HR department. So.
I mean, again, as we build the budget, we can make sure that we emphasize that for next school year and get rolling on it.
And the other question, just real quick on the list, and I only bring this up because we had just had you guys have just little things like Chromebooks as part of recruiting. When we discussed that intercom system and stuff like that, it was stated there that would be good for recruiting teachers,
Oh, that's good.
but it's not, I don't see it on here.
I agree.
And Avid.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just noticed if we're gonna put down that we have Chromebooks, which seems, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, that it's really a huge big deal, then I think our $600,000 intercom system should be on there too. Or the system that goes throughout the school.
That's good.
I agree that HR should be a priority, and at the last meeting, I think that's kind of the vision the board has, and we had said last one, that maybe we'd have Kara look and see what funds or when we develop this budget, but when we talk later, when we talk about a rainy day fund policy, I brought that up at the last meeting, but setting aside a certain portion of funds, if we did that and it freed up some of the beginning balances, it might be something we can gain sooner rather than later, but I agree it's a priority. And I thought, when I was looking through this, and there was mention of a brochure, and I thought a lot of the information you want on a brochure is already compiled here. And I think that would be a good idea, because even if we're not, this year we might have some positions to fill, even if we find ourselves in a position where we're not filling positions, it would be better to have people calling us wanting to come work here than all of a sudden we need to go find somebody and find. So I thought being real aggressive in brochures is a good idea.
Please, as you look through that, if you see any, or if you have any other ideas, please contact me. And, it's something that's it's ongoing. I love the idea of having an HR person. It frees us up to do some more things, and it allows that person to focus on HR issues. So it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I guess if there was an issue or something going on, I mean, it's no different than any other business. If you have an issue, say, with your boss or how things are going or that type of thing, you don't go to your boss and discuss that. I just am still very floored that there isn't somebody outside that somebody's able to talk to or address an issue.
Fair enough.
In the next steps listed, as much as I talked about daycare / preschool, and as much as I feel like we need to focus on our first mission, which is just educating kids before we take on other things, there are other places in the community, like the hospital, for example, that might be willing to partner on that. And I think that would also be a huge retention and recruitment tool if we had some sort of daycare, preschool.
Well, I know of places where it's been done with, even like Forest Service will offer. I know places where like Forest Service stuff, so the same thing, somebody might be interested in working together.
Yeah.
Because I know it's some are small towns in northern Idaho and stuff, where there's a large Forest Service presence, they provide daycare.
So we can reach out to those other communities.
Well, that was definitely brought up at our last meeting, the idea of partnering with hospital and Forest Service, and there's others, so.
And I think that's the hard part is to me, basic stuff that, I mean, daycare, housing, it just seems that you would think in your head that those are things that should just be here, but they're just not.
But they're just
So,
not, right?
They're just not.
Right. That's true.
On the Safe Schools Return Plan,
Uh-huh.
and the maybe good news that came out yesterday about March 31st being the end of mask requirements in schools, how will that affect? You said we may have to change this plan, but I was more concerned in terms of what we have done with our vaccination exceptions. And if that is an accommodation that we made in those, that they have to wear masks. And if you need direction or need the board to say, go ahead and just go with it, don't tell those teachers they have to keep wearing masks because it was part of their accommodation.
Yeah, I never said, yeah, that's a hard one because you don't want to have to single out certain employees, like then you just be able to tell like who's vaccinated, who's not. So we'll do everything we can not
Yeah,
to do that.
that really drifts way into discrimination.
I agree.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
way across the line into discrimination. It's like it says, then it's obvious. There can be no question as who's made what decision personally, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think we can. I don't think we can legally, it's probably would be violating people's rights to participate in that kind of practice.
More than they've been.
I would
Well,
say,
no, not any more than
I don't know if we can, I don't know if we want to. I mean, that's just like,
I think it might be a good idea to consider some language, and maybe you already have, right, wrong, or indifferent. Oh, where's that guy from? Thielman, that made the news because he said no more masks. But they made a strictly mask optional policy, and I like that language because in the language they said discrimination will not be tolerated. They're optional if you choose to wear it or not wear it, and I think in light of the current situation, that would probably be better than just saying we're not doing masks anymore. So that if a child or his family do feel like they need to wear one, or a teacher, they shouldn't be martyred because of that.
No, agreed, yeah, you shouldn't discriminate either way.
it'll be one of those things that as it rolls out, depending on what they do in the decision. I think for me, I see the real issue happening in the next, between now and March 31st is as the state dropping the indoor mask mandate, yet still keeping it in schools. I mean, that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I know it's, a lot of people are gonna come to you probably next board meeting if that probably happens. It's like, how does it make any sense that we can go to the bar and drink and we can hang out at these games, yet we can't? Because we have to have masks. So, I mean, there's a lot of things around that at this point that we all have questions. So, I mean, for me, we're gonna keep trying to do everything we can to stay compliant, yet not go over the top with some of the things. You know, for instance, in the vaccine mandate, there were some schools that required very specific fitted N95 masks for those that didn't get vaccinated. Some of them required double mask. I mean, they just went over. What it takes to stay functioning well and as normal as possible. Anything else about COVID you want to talk about? Maybe not, never again.
Just as we never hear it again.
Same here, but here we go. We do have strategic planning. We have a final meeting this Friday with Jerry, our consultant. We should get most of it done at that point. We've really narrowed down our goals. What we're really working on this Friday will be kind of the methods of measurement and accountability to make sure it's really narrowed down to who's going to do what and by when. So should have that ready really by your next board meeting. I think we'll take a look at probably put a final stamp on it. So good things going on there. In terms of an Avid update, actually today we got 3 teams registered for a summer institute, one from each building. We received a HEC board grant to implement Avid. I want to say it's about $65,000. So through that grant, they'll pay the registrations for the conferences. We'll still have to pay travel expenses, but 64,000 will really help us a lot offset some of the costs that we originally were thinking we were gonna have to pay. So we're pretty excited about that one. The audio enhancement project, we actually have all the, not all, probably 95% of the equipment came in the last week, beginning of this week. Just waiting for them to give us a date on when it's gonna get scheduled. Talking to Andy, our biggest concern on that is finding the contractors that are coming and do that. Our impression, talking to them, is that they generally try to find local contractors to do it. We're skeptical that they're gonna be able to find local contracts here anyway to do it. So we're assuming that they're gonna have to send somebody from their corporate office or their area here to do it. But they asked me for a deadline, and I told them I really think a drop dead deadline should be by the end of spring break. We should be able to use it after spring break. So pushing hard on my end to see what we can do, but the equipment is at least all here, and that was originally what they said was going to be the biggest roadblock. So, and then finally, I have a student success input meeting tomorrow night. Input meeting with parents, community members, anybody who wants to come here at 6:30. I try to start doing that once a month to try to get continual input from our community. If I don't get the kind of the diverse groups that I need as part of that fund, I will be probably reaching out to specific people, making personal invitations to come and talk to them and seek their input, because part of the law does require us to have ongoing engagement. Now, especially we're at the end of the pandemic, it's fairly easy to say that we should be really holding more in-person meetings and getting their interaction. So looking forward to having some people show up for that.
Sounds good.
Did you say that was tomorrow at 6:30?
Tomorrow at 6:30.
Here.
Yep. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Mhm.
All right. Going along, the financials from January. Have any questions on those? No, if there are no questions. I would entertain a motion to pass them as presented.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
27. Wendy moved, Joe seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. The donations. You should read those off. Have there been any additions, to those 3 items? Is there a volunteer to read the donations? See.
I can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the donations are Mark McDonald to the Monroe Mechanics Program donated a Super Gemini FT 244 stroke motor valued at $1,500. Harney District Hospital to the BHS Strength and PE Program, a treadmill valued at $5,000. And Micah Snyder to the Monroe Woodworking Program, miscellaneous hardwood valued at $300.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the donations?
I will make a motion.
Wendy moves, there a second?
I'll second.
Joe seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Donations are accepted unanimously. Next up, the budget calendar. Even though budgeting is not for a while, we have some vacancies on the budget board. We need community members on there, and we kind of thought if we set the calendar now, it'd be easier to recruit people. That's about the same as the calendar we did in the past, but I think last year we got it done in 2 meetings instead of 3.
Yeah.
So the question is, does that calendar look all right to everyone? Are there times of the day that would work better? Will that work? And then the other question is, do you have any recommendations for people? And you don't have to make them right here in the meeting, but if you think of someone who's interested, contact Mr. Quick. There'll be at least, more than 2 seats.
Let's look to see where the current terms are, but I could send you an email and kind of let you know how many positions, and because it would be nice to have them in place and you guys approve them at the next meeting in March. That would be ideal. So if you have people that are interested in being on the budget committee, send me their names and let's talk to them.
And they can't be employees, so that includes coaches or any other extra duty stuff they get paid for.
Are you still gonna do it?
Is my term up or is it one more year? I don't.
I think it's 5 more years.
Yours is, yours is open-ended.
Mine's open.
Yeah, it's,
Sure.
Excellent. Yeah, so we want to.
Quite a recruitment process.
Wow, no pressure.
Does that calendar look all right, at least for jumping off? And then when we have that first meeting, we can set a calendar that works better for community members.
that's way too far out for me to know how the calendar looks.
I think they're all Tuesdays.
Depends on what else I've been volunteered for by then.
Yeah. Well, if that looks like it'll work for now, I would entertain a motion to pass that budget calendar as presented.
I'll move to pass the budget calendar.
I will second.
Wendy seconds, all in favor signify by aye.
Right.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously to accept the budget calendar. Next up, personnel. There was just a resignation. So if we have, if there aren't any questions.
Well, it's probably not relevant to this at all, but I guess I didn't know who she was or where she taught at.
She's at the elementary school. So I want to say second grade teacher, third grade teacher. Been here for now for, say, four years now. Really just getting back to her families. Unfortunately, she's done a fabulous job teaching for us. But yeah, we'll get her own now and wants to get a little closer to mom and dad. I think we kind of made the deal with her husband down the road that hey, we're going here for now, but eventually we have to get back to where they're both from. So, hate to see her go.
I would entertain a motion to accept the resignation.
I'll move to accept the resignation.
Is there a second? Wendy seconds. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, policy BBAA, which is one that we held over from the last meeting. And that had to do with some language, and it has to do with legal advisement for the board. And the reason I asked that we look at it again is because the possible language would say that a request for legal opinion by a board member has to be approved by a majority vote. Or we can opt to have the language in there that says that will incur a cost for the district. And I know that as the district that pays OSBA dues, all of the board members have access to OSBA and their legal opinions and pay. So you could call if you're worried about something procedural we were doing, any of us could call, which technically would count as a legal opinion. And I didn't want to put something in our policy that would dissuade someone from doing that. And I also like that it says incur a cost, because if, for example, if any of us, or if the chair needed to contact them to ask how we should go about doing something, that's different. Or if we had to, Hungerford, we have a retainer with them, right? So we could call and ask them the question, but none of us, according to this policy, even the chair, would be able to do something that would cost money without a majority vote of the board. And I liked it being that way. Because if worse came to worse, we could have a special meeting or an emergency meeting if we needed to take some kind of legal action. But I don't think.
No, that makes sense to me. Should we definitely discuss?
You want to keep the, so the first bracketed piece there where it says advice of, that's also something you want to keep it in as advice of or opinion. You want to keep that advice in there or pull that out? I don't know if it makes a lot of difference to have the first piece.
I think it's 6 on 1/2 dozen
Yeah.
together.
But you do want to keep the first yellow area where it says that will incur a cost. Keep that in.
I think we should keep that first yellow part, and then the second yellow part, board chair is authorized to obtain legal advice or opinions. I feel like if we keep that first part like we just talked about, then that could be assumed, and I don't think it would be necessary.
Okay.
Thoughts on that?
No, that sounds good.
Well, if that's agreeable, I would entertain a motion to accept that policy BBAA as amended.
We'll motion to approve it as amended.
Second,
Second.
Joe moves, Wendy seconds, all in favor, signify by aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next order of business is the ASTL request that Mr. Quick received and forwarded on to us about the issue that's going on that has to do with the state trying to usurp some rights of trusted forest lands. And I kind of felt like this might be important to us, even though we don't have those trusted forest lands the same as on the coast. We do get the payment in lieu of taxes, and I felt like the rights that are being addressed here are similar to our rights for that money that we receive as a county. So you did more research than anyone.
I did it today, just Oregon State, or the state is trying to buy it for Oregon State for research. A research forest. The forest itself has not been, it's basically, I mean, he says it inside this letter. There is, I think, $40 million that should be taken out of that forest every year, but they haven't cut on it for years and years and years. There is already, the thing I guess I don't understand, there's a couple things I didn't understand, that they're, the reason why, I didn't understand why they wanted this forest. They already have the, I cannot say this very well, the Salusla forest, which is only 139 miles away from this forest. So why did they need this one too? To do their research on it. I guess I was very surprised. They have not, the thing that they kept saying, and I even watched the meeting, the state meeting, that when they voted on it, whether or not they were gonna sell it. But they don't let anybody, keep saying that public will still have access to this forest. But they haven't allowed anything on this forest, from harvesting mistletoe to huckleberries to anything like that on this particular piece of land. So saying that it still is public accessible, I was really kind of, I according to what this gentleman in the letter was saying, is basically the kind of same thing, is this is what they're selling to you, but this is what they're already doing right now. So it is, I did kind of look after, I did some research on the, what is it, the initials, the A, yeah. And I mean, that's their function. I only saw what I saw on their website, which of course is going to be their bullet points of what they do. I didn't research if they, how much they actually accomplish. I will say I was really surprised that, you know, when Oregon became a state, there was 3.4 million acres of land that was deeded, or that was to be for education, and now we only have 7. It's just amazing to me. But anyway, that's what they do. I mean, that's what this company does, is it fights for us to keep our trusted forestry, and they do it, and they go after in different ways. So I didn't realize, I mean, there's some of the land is used for hunting. They're starting to do real estate. And that if you had time, actually look it up, because they show how, in that thing, they show how they determined what pieces of land are actually land for trust. It was kind of interesting. So it's just a little video, like a YouTube video on their website that shows that, what they do, how they do it, and how the land itself was deeded to help education.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize there were organizations out there like this that actually look at the other side of things, because usually the forest, you get the environmental groups that are fighting to do everything they can to keep you from logging and using them, but this, I mean, they actually trying to protect the trust lands, which is a worthy cause, really. So,
And I didn't understand if by us, I think the 250 that we would put in to the hat is kind of how I saw it, would basically help then continue to protect the 75,000 acres that we have. Whether or not our hand is in this particular pot, but from what I understood, it is because it goes into the permanent fund. And then that permanent fund is dispersed, is how I understood it from what I was looking at today, and that's how this organization explained it. So the 250 just sounds like it would help. We're maybe not see anything from it except maybe down the road, but we would be helping them to continue. It's kind of similar to a restaurant organization that I have. I may not necessarily personally see it, but I pay a fee for them to go to Congress and fight whatever restaurant food stuff that comes across the board. It's kind of the same thing.
Well, everyone probably knows this, probably better than I do, not to give a history lesson, but all of the publicly owned lands in Oregon, within each county, I wouldn't call it payment in lieu of taxes because we still get our payment in lieu of taxes payments the county does. But there were certain tax subsidies that each county got depending on how much public land was within it. And I think it was Measure 98, 20 years ago. The state decided that all that would go to the general fund and then be dispersed per student and per need instead of it coming to the counties. Well, when you're in the biggest county that's very sparsely populated, that kind of shot us right in the foot.
Yeah.
I think the $250, it isn't so much that they need the money. I think it's just they are wanting the support of school districts to say these districts support us. And while I don't spend $1 taxpayer money lightly, I do think that this is congruent with the culture of our county, what used to be a timber county.
Yeah.
So I was in
I
favor.
mean, in my opinion, we've seen, there's good examples of mismanagement by state institutions that end up owning productive ranches and forest land, and so, yeah, obviously not in favor. It going to a research forest either.
We want to pass a motion to join the ASTL for a $250 one-time membership fee.
Just with a little bit of stuff that I looked at today, like I said, it looks to me that we as school districts and as school, that we need somebody out there that's fighting for this and to keep what money we do get from stuff like that, to keep it in the schools, because obviously it's slowly diminishing and those funds are going away because the land is going away because the state's selling it or buying it. In this case, the state's going to buy it for Oregon State University, which is still a school, but not really what it was intended for in the beginning. So I would make a motion to yes.
Wendy moves that we join the ASTL for $250. Joe seconds. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next thing on the agenda is the local control resolution. Mr. Quick put that together, but there is a big groundswell of districts across the state right now that are frustrated and wanting to try and exert their authority and take back local control. And I think the masking has been a catalyst for it, but it has to do with curriculum adoption and everything else. And so that group, which is might be the board chair out of Eagle Point, has kind of been heading that up. But they have been encouraging everyone to pass these resolutions to show the state government and the governor that we would like to have that control back. And I felt like the resolution Mr. Quick put together did a pretty good job of softly stating that without making any outlandish demands or anything like that. I did wonder when I read it again today if it's moot now that we're hearing that OHA is, or OSHA, or whoever is gonna discontinue mask in school up to the 31st, but I still think it's important that we exert that authority, because I honestly believe that the only reason this happened, the March 31st deadline for masks, is because of all this pushback from schools like Alcee and from all these districts that are getting together. And I'll talk about it more later, but there was a conference call with that group of people. There were probably 50 schools represented, many of whom have already passed resolutions like this, that are really wanting to try and take back some kind of local control. I'm talking about that later. They also, I'm talking about that later, but
No,
it's up for discussion, what you think of the resolution, or if you think.
I think your resolution is important. I don't think it's moot. I think a lot can happen in, what is it? 50 days, 53 days. In the next 53 days, a lot can change. You know, I'm worried it's like the carrot and the on the stick thing. And it's maybe to appease people, to get them to just calm down. And I think a resolution is important. We should have control over our kids' education and how we run our schools.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Quick, do you have any?
I think it's important to not only pass the resolution, I'll send it to the governor's office. I think they need to see that it came from you as a school district. I don't think it says, we're not making any outlandish plans other than we need to be able to make decisions locally.
No, it's very well worded. You did it. I mean, I think it's well written. Anyways, personally, I think it's well written.
Pass it, I will print it off tonight and have you guys sign it before you leave. Just put her in the mail tomorrow.
Take a motion. Is
I'll move to pass this resolution asking for local control back.
there a second?
I'll second.
Joe moves, Wendy seconds to pass resolution 2022-01. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the superintendent evaluation process. We've gone over this a little bit, but it's something that we need to do in open session for transparency. We did our targeted feedback survey analysis and summary with our OSBA consultant tonight. And so kind of what I was thinking, and Mr. Quick was graciously offered to let us put off the contract extension and the evaluation. But at our next meeting, which would be before the state deadline of March 15th, you're supposed to do contract renewals by. At our next meeting, we could do our formal evaluation and address contract renewal. Within about 2 weeks from now, maybe I could send out the OSBA workbook, which has the same rubrics, and send them out to all the board members and Mr. Quick, so he can do a self-evaluation, and we'll all go through that based on our observations and the target feedback survey. That'll give Mr. Quick time to do self-evaluation, collecting artifacts of evidence that showcase the things that he proved or does well, and then try to get those back about a week before our next meeting and compile the results so that when we get together in executive session, we can let Mr. Quick kind of present his self-evaluation, any artifacts. We'll excuse him, have a discussion with the board so we can come with a one voice message of, you know, this is how you scored as a whole, and then we'll present those findings in public session and we can address contract. If that sounds all right, if that timeline, about a week to fill that stuff out. Does that sound all right to you?
Sure works for me.
So that's what we'll do in March.
And I don't think you need any help from Vince with surveys for off the.
No, in the past, we use this same workbook and there's areas to comment, and in the past, sometimes we compile those comments. And I was thinking if we could focus on the scores themselves for each of those metrics, and then when we get together, we can discuss those comments instead of trying to compile them, because that sometimes ends up kind of funky because you can't summarize someone's comments. So if you put exact comments in there, they can be identifying. We'll discuss it to come together with one set of comments, one message, if that works.
Makes sense.
Vincent's timeliness on that targeted feedback survey. We can handle this. All right, well, I don't think we need to take action on that. We'll just plan on that next month. Next item on the agenda, the policy discussion for rainy day policies. Mr. Quick looked at a couple different policies. I think he talked to legal about their advisement on it. Mr. Adams did send us the one that Albany uses, and it was really lengthy and really specific about exactly how much money they hold, exactly what it could be used for. And so if you had a chance to look at those policies here, we have policy DA right now, but it just says that the board will review the financial needs of the district annually. This proposed policy, or if we decide to adopt it or decide to modify it, would set aside a certain percentage of our ending cash balance to be used specifically for emergencies, to meet cash flow needs, to keep our staff employed if we run out of funding from other sources. And that figure of 8%, that when I talked to Mr. Adams, he was saying 8 is the normal number, and they went so far as to 12%. What did you?
In my previous districts, it was like the goal for most districts was to get at least 5%. That was like their minimum, you know, but kind of just depending on how much each district wanted to make sure they were setting aside, really. Like you said, I go anywhere from 5 to us, they probably have this 8 somewhere in between. So,
And I think we did put it on here as a first read, just discussion to see if it's even something the board wants to entertain, if you want to modify it. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea because it's not urgent. We don't have to have it done by next month. If we do like it, whether we want to wordsmith it or not, we can put it on the agenda for next meeting and maybe include our other board members as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. If we don't have something in place already about savings, we should.
And I like this message it sends to staff, because that's one of the specific reasons is to keep staff employed if we have an economic hardship. So yeah, we'll
so for the next time,
Get a minute to find out what you think we can afford.
right, I'd like to see exactly where we have been the last few years, where we're gonna end up this year, was maybe with the projection. So we can at least come up with the right number.
Yeah.
any board requests or reports for the next meeting?
I don't have any.
One thing I thought of to make it as simple as possible for everyone here, but in talking about the biomass, maybe $180,000 a year isn't a lot to pay for a heating system when it figures in the debt and the consumables. But I would be curious to know how much we pay for the heating of the other school systems, and I'd be curious to know what the cost of other heating systems is. I would assume that propane boiler is probably not the original one that's there. They probably replaced that.
It's a new one, yeah.
So what is the cost of a new boiler? I wouldn't even know, but we've spent $725,000 in the last 5 years, just us. And if we're one of 3 partners and they spend anything comparable to that, it's 2.17 million or something. So
Yeah, I'm kind of curious when the debt is. Also, when I say no, like when is it paid for? When does that figure come down? Or it doesn't ever?
Oh, it's a certain, I want to say it was a 20-year loan. I want to say they had on it. So, but I can tell you that the lion's share of the payments are, I mean, the district pays the lion's share of the cost. So when they put the years on the buildings, ours by far is the highest. So we pay the most.
when that cost has been exponential, even though the BTUs haven't increased exponentially,
The cost
the
that.
cost has.
So there was some weird November, like there was a crazy amount of BTUs.
Yeah, and that was, I think they said they explained it for, she had some explanation for how they hadn't read it the previous month before or something like that.
Didn't read it. Well, I mean, but the previous month, October was out on schedule, 416 compared to 415 the year before. But then November was 991.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a cold November that I can remember. So I was just, I should have asked Lori when she was, I kind of looking at it afterwards, I'm like, wait, that number's
You're
confusing.
gonna wanna keep it on your radar for sure, and I give you more updates on next month, for sure. You can see their financials, see where they're at, how long the loan is, and things like that. I mean, you're an owner as a school district in that project, so you should see where the money's going.
Yeah, if we could look at that and maybe have a discussion next time. If we are an owner, maybe, Mr. Quick, you probably attend those meetings. I do. If the board needs to be represented on that board, we should probably have a discussion.
Why?
Yeah, for sure, if anybody, anyone, if you wanna come join me at any of those meetings, I would welcome it.
Well, we're openly,
It's not just me.
openly discussing it. I've been coaching partner at basketball. And I'm concerned that we're spending so much on heating when there's a lot of other issues. You know, coach up there and I went to use the restroom and stuff, and I'm concerned that there's a lot of other stuff, and so I want to make sure we're getting the most for our money.
Sure.
Because I mean, the first night I was there, like, whoa, I asked Mr. Martinez, I'm like, I was surprised by some of the stuff. It's rougher than I expected.
Yeah, $180,000 last year, even when you figure in all the benefits and stuff, that's 2 full-time teachers at least. It's a lot of cost. I know we have to keep those buildings, but it just seems like a lot. So, yeah, if we could talk about that stuff next time.
I would definitely be open to selling it to more people if that's a possibility.
If there's only 30% surplus,
Yeah, you'd have to increase output to service a lot more people.
if we look at some of those financials and numbers and start these discussions, I think that'll take us in a good. We can start having a discussion, for sure. And the one last thing that I was gonna bring up, and I already talked about earlier, but this group of Oregon boards for local control had a conference call, and if anyone's interested, I can send you the information on these Zoom meetings. Any board members are welcome to listen on that conference call. Trying to think, there were schools from Valley, Rogue Valley, Blau County, there were schools from all over that were represented. I think the OSBA president was on it, and the superintendent from Alcide that made the news for no masks also spoke quite a bit. But one of their big pushes now is they're very frustrated not only by the state, but by OSBA, because that's supposed to be our lobby group to represent the school boards. And a lot of what they do, maybe more so in the past few years, seems to be more in line with ODE or the state of government's concerns and not the concerns of the school.
More in line with 10 or so major school districts. They're pushing for those school districts and not the rest of them.
Yeah, they got a seat at the table, and I agree that I don't feel like all of the choices they make are in the best interest of all the districts. We pay a significant amount. I mean, they're funded by districts, and there are a lot of districts that are disgruntled. And so that group, I think, is starting to kind of focus on that. And especially now with the mask, they will really focus on that. But they are even reaching out to find out about insurance. Well, for one, apparently you can be insured by PACE and not be a member of OSBA. But they're reaching out to see, basically talking about starting another school board association that would be more representative. So if any of those things are of interest to you, 20th, they're going to have a conference call. It is good to see the grassroots movement, and it's good to see so many schools from diverse backgrounds that are all saying the same thing. I can forward any of that stuff that I get on if you'd like. Sign up on the news list.
Yeah.
Okay. I will email that out.
No, I know my own inbox has received emails from her, from the lady at the Eagle Point.
I know, and I wish people would reply to all.
Great.
But But they're really excited about it, and that's,
There's a lot, I guess I'm not, as understood, it's like, Eastern Oregon is all the other school boards close by on board, or do you know, or?
I don't think a lot of them knew about it. The lady who set it up, who's out of Eagle Point, got OSBA to send her all the district secretary emails, and she emailed all of those out. She emailed it out to all the district secretaries, and from the little bit that I had talked to board members in other towns in the last week, a lot of them didn't know about it. Probably went in the spam folder because it kind of looked like a spam email. But I think as word of mouth gets out, I think it's gonna be way bigger. Just the 50 that were involved. Any other thoughts for the good of the order?
I don't have any.
See none,
Mr. Frank,
Mr. Medley.
my haste to get my board report in quickly, I left something out, and I still wasn't first, Cheryl said, so I didn't win the competition. But I did leave some out over the weekend, it came to my mind, and obviously I couldn't put it in after that, I don't think. But I did want to make sure we recognize a couple people at our high school. Amanda Sanders was our student of the year at the Harney County dinner. Well deserving. We picked that by nominees of our teachers. Our teachers nominate certain seniors, and then we put them in, and then they vote, and they get down, and she was the winner of the student of the year. We're very excited for her. And Mario Reckenzone was our teacher at the high school that was recognized as the Harney County Educator of the Year. So Amanda won it for our school. Each one of the schools gets a student, but Mario won it for the county. So I apologize that I missed that again. Next time I'll just make sure I'm late on my board report. No, I'm just kidding, Cheryl. But I did want to make sure we mentioned that and that you guys were aware of that. Because so when you see them, congratulations would be awesome. So
Thank you for including that. All right, nothing else, meeting adjourned. Thanks, comment.